So when we do therapy, and when we do the therapy that I'm working with, we are wanting to physically change the synapses and how they fire, the neural network that those synapses flow across, to create a new neural network around this performance issue, where the new neural network and the sequence of those neurons end in a place that doesn't activate our amygdala, that doesn't activate our sympathetic nervous system. And so this fight or flight that happens in a nanosecond, well, all of a sudden that's not engaged. That's not hacking our muscle memory. And we're able to just do the thing that we were able to do 1,000 times before, because the new neural networks are created around the failure that happened, that started the whole Yips process. It's interesting. It's like if I walk through the woods, and every time I walk through the woods, I take the same trail. And that trail leads, in the case of the Yips and performance issues, at the end of that trail is a performance issue, is anxiety, is fear of failure, is the fear of not being good enough or being an imposter. Well, every time I do the thing that starts me on that trail, I walk on that trail, and that trail becomes more and more worn, like any trail in the woods, where anybody coming in the woods can see this well-worn trail. Well, what we want to do is we want to quit walking on that trail over and over and over, just continuing to make that ingrained, just continuing to keep that buried, because it's always going to end up at the same outcome, at the same finish line, which is this sympathetic nervous system hacking of my biology and my muscle memory. But through therapy, and through the specific therapy that I do with, these high performers and athletes, well, we might start on that trail, and we might start walking down that trail. But at some point, we're going to branch off for a second. Yeah, that part of the woods is completely overgrown. There's no trail. There's no reason why anybody would walk that direction, but we're going to take that route this time. And then the next time we review this, we might start on that trail again and go down that well-worn trail. But the more we can take this detour to this new trail, and at the end of that new trail, there isn't this sympathetic nervous system response. There's this response of balance. There's this response of a new narrative, a new positive narrative, a new response to the inevitable failure that any high performer is going to experience. Well, all of a sudden, the more we walk down this new trail of therapy, well, now I can start to see that trail a little bit better. And the more often I take that trail, the less often I take the old trail. And the hope is that at the conclusion of therapy, we've established this new trail that's leading at a new place of balance, a new place of performance, even with the memory and the experiences of the failure that set us down the old path. And as we continue to take that trail, the old path starts to get overgrown. Things start to grow on that trail, and all of a sudden I can't see that trail as clearly anymore. And eventually, if I were to come to the woods, I wouldn't even know where that old trail was, because all I see is the new trail. And so this is what we're able to do through the specific therapies that help people, that truly help people through PTSD and trauma, only applied with the trauma-like experiences and symptoms that people, athletes and these high performers are accustomed to. And so when Francine Shapiro did her research, she found that, and I can't remember the exact amounts, but the number 34% is coming to my mind. 30-something% of talk therapy was helping people overcome their PTSD symptoms. This is primarily in the 1980s, when veterans from Vietnam were coming back and having the PTSD symptoms, the flashbacks, and all the things that we kind of associate with that veteran who has PTSD. And because she saw that these talk therapies were failing, her discovery of EMDR and beginning to implement EMDR, we're seeing success rates with EMDR around PTSD and trauma with 70%, 70+% of individuals. And so it takes talk therapy a further step, and it gets our biology, our left and right hemispheres of our brain, bilateral stimulation, to be able to help us actually start to create those new neural networks. The way in which EMDR and these trauma therapies have been able to have a much more significant effect on PTSD and trauma has been pretty astronomical. In fact, like, at least in the communities that I'm in, EMDR is the most sought after therapy for this. So as I'm sitting there, almost a decade of working with individuals with PTSD and trauma, and beginning to have athletes walk through my door with anxiety disorders and stress disorders around performance, this correlation between the two just started to become, I just started to get very curious about it, to the point where I started implementing my trauma-based therapies with my athletes around their performance. And the results have been pretty incredible. A college softball player who was experiencing the yips, who had been to numerous pitching coaches, who had gone over her pitching mechanics over and over and over again, and through countless hours in the cage. As soon as she was placed in a game situation with a batter in the batter's box, all of that muscle memory would fail. Regardless of what she did, at the point of release, that small little panic attack would happen, and she could no longer release the ball the way that she had thousands of times. And 8 different pitching coaches were unable to overcome that game time, hypercritical, you must perform and perform well right now. They couldn't overcome it. 4 sessions of my work with her and applying trauma-based, PTSD-based, mental health interventions, 4 sessions, she was able to overcome. We were able to create those new neural networks, and she was able to get back into her flow state of just releasing the ball the way that she always had, because the sympathetic nervous system wasn't getting kicked into gear. It wasn't getting involved. And she was desensitized to that fear at the point of releasing that ball. To the football player who, if he had one more concussion, he was no longer going to be able to play football anymore. Where every time he would go in for the hit, go in to wrap up on the tackle, that split second, no matter how many times he told himself before the play not to do it, he would think concussion right before impact. And right before impact, he would slow, he would let up, he would freeze, he would flinch. And if you know anything about football, like the second that you flinch, the second you slow at the point of contact, that's actually when you're going to get hurt. That's when you're going to have a higher likelihood of concussion. So the thing that, like this hyper focus on not getting a concussion was actually the one thing that was going to increase the potential for him to get the concussion, because it was hacking his biology, and he was unable to overcome that nanosecond concussion thought that would happen right before he hit. Again, PTSD-based therapies, desensitizing him to the fear of that. He was able to overcome and get past that nervous system hacking his biology at that last second, and he was able to get back into a flow state of just being able to tackle without that constant nagging of the fear. I could talk about other aspects and the way in which we install future templates, and that'll be something that we'll talk about eventually, is, hey, like, can we even prepare ahead of time for failure and try to establish a neural network around potential failure in the future? Like, absolutely we can, and we are, and we're doing that. But the real thing here is that we're trying to show that your battle and your performance, your battle, like when it's so critical that you have to perform, when it's the scholarship or the potential for a scholarship, when you're professional and it literally is your income, when it's the executive who is needing to make a decision or needing to create a change, but yet it's the fear and the doubt that gets in their way, that hacks their ability to be able to make the hard decision that maybe otherwise they know they would need to make. To the day trader, as a guy who likes to dabble in crypto and in day trading, the fear of missing out, I have my rules and this is how I'm going to establish my trades, and this is kind of my Bible on my financial decisions, and yet in the nanosecond of the fear coming up and me hitting buy or hitting sell, that idea of like then going back and like, why did I break my rules and it didn't work out because I broke my, like, why do I do that? Why can't I stop myself from doing that? It all comes down to the biology. It all comes down to the fear of flight, or the fight or flight. It all comes down to the base fears of the performance that we have to do, because the stakes are high. They might not be life-threatening like PTSD and trauma, certainly, but they are a threat to our livelihood. They are a threat to our dreams, to our goals. And those things are really important and very significant. And when fear gets involved, and when that fear gets our fight or flight involved, we're not able to access what we need to access. We're not able to pull off what we need to pull off. Talk therapy alone might not get us there. Talk therapy alone might not help us overcome those things. And so what I'm proposing is there's other ways. There's other therapies. There's things that take it a step further than talk therapy that are being proven to assist, to being proven to help, to have an effect on the biology as much as the mind, as much as the heart. And that gets me really excited. The success we've had so far, the success I hope we have in the future, gets me really excited because people whose careers were ended by the Yips, people whose careers were ended by making the wrong decision or making the wrong play. Well, it was fear that created that. And maybe just maybe there's a different way than what we've been doing so far to overcome that fear. And that's where I'm hoping to have an opportunity to work. And that's where I'm hoping to have an opportunity to connect with athletes in these high performers, because those are my people. That's who I love. Sitting in the mental health office, not coaching anymore. I miss my athletes. I miss the competition. And so to be able to reconnect with this group in such a significant way and potentially be able to help in ways that for all that their coaches are equipped to do and the amazing ways in which they're able to impact them, this is a gap where the coach might not be able to help. And to be able to fill that gap is really exciting to me. And I'm really excited to see what comes next with it. So if you heard this and that's you're that person who is, you're in this critical performance role, being an athlete, an executive, whatever, and you recognize, my fight or flight gets kicked into gear. And when that happens, I'm not able to do the thing that I know I can do, that I know I want to do. I want to say that there might be another way. Of all the other ways that you've sought help, there might be something different. And so if that's you and you're interested in trying something different, reach out to me. Subscribe to this podcast because we're just going to be giving more and more information out week to week. Go to chrisbruton.com. There's a lot of great information there. There's links all over the website that you'll be able to click to get in touch with me. Or just email me at info@chrisbruton.com. That's BRUTON. And we can get in touch. We will reach out. Just because you've tried these other things, there might be a different way. There might be hope. Let's find out.